The condition of Nebraska's soybeans improved slightly this week, with 1% of the crop moving from good to excellent. But Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Loren Giesler says there are problems evident in some of Nebraska's soybean fields, including sudden death syndrome and white mold. We talked with Loren at the recent soybean management field day near Greenwood and started by asking for an outlook on issues arising in the state's soybeans.
We're seeing a lot of stem and root rots, and this is really that season to get them identified correctly. Not that you're going to do anything for management right now, but in the future so you can manage them right. Seeing sudden death syndrome, brown stem rot, phytophthora, even some white mold.
Any treatment options for any of those?
Really right now, no. Even white mold, this is when you see it. But really with white mold, you want to do some treatments back during flowering. So that's really a hard disease to manage because you got to look at your window of weather during, June, that last few weeks of June when we're in flowering. So right now though, even though you see it, really not too much you're going to do about it to stop it.
Tell me how you diagnose differences between them all.
So our sclerotinia white mold, that one's probably the easiest. You see that cottony white growth and the sclerotia on the stems. When we're looking at that flowering with sudden death syndrome though, that's a little bit harder. So you see the foliar symptoms of SDS, those can look like brown stem rot. So I just encourage everybody to make sure you're splitting those stems. If you see dark discoloration in the center of the stem, then you know you're dealing with brown stem rot. If you don't, and you're seeing it on the outside, not the outside, you see green stem yet, but just underneath that epidermal layer, you see some streaking, then you're dealing with SDS. The other thing we'll see, SDS plants won't typically have a very good taproot. That'll be rotted, so they'll pull easy. But again, they can have the same foliar symptoms, so make sure you're identifying them correctly.
Just so you know what to expect, what kind of yield hits are we talking with these?
A huge range. So all of our stem and root rots are usually kind of aggregated or pocketed in the field. In those pockets, I mean, you could see 50% or greater yield loss. The key is most of them aren't across a significant acreage in the field. So that's the other thing I really want to emphasize is that everybody kind of assesses that field and see how much is there, because the next time when you're trying to make that decision, are you going to use, for sure a phytophthora resistant variety? Are you going to use an SDS rated variety? Are you going to use a seed treatment? These kinds of things, you got to really know what you got. At
which level do you say, yes, I will do those things?
Well, I don't know the exact number on that, Jeff. I think I'm going to say it's over 20% for sure, but you're going to have to look at that relative yield difference. And keep in mind too that some of those treatments as they're coming out, those are kind of maximum potential differences that you're going to see when you see an average yield difference, because those are usually in high disease intensity situations.
For white mold, things you should do in the future?
White mold in the future, make sure if you have a significant problem with white mold, avoid narrow rows. We know that 30-inch rows are going to be better than 15s and for sure 7.5s. I think as we see producers go to 15, which we know yield can be better, if you're in white mold, I wouldn't do that. So stay at 30, use variety selection, and then really try to assess what your situation is next year if you're in an area. You don't have to have a lot of those sclerotia. You may not have seen it. I've talked to several guys this year that they hadn't had a lot of white mold, but now all of a sudden they got a bunch. So probably in the past they just had an occasional plant out there that had a white mold. Well, then we get a year like this where we were really wet and cool during the flowering time, and then you see a lot. Historically, it's not a disease that we have every year, but the last 3 years in a row now we've had cool, wet weather during that time, and that's just what we're going to see when we have that. So just keep that in mind and treat appropriately in the future.
We'll have other interviews from the Soybean Management Field Day on upcoming episodes. On the Market Journal website, we'll link to more information on identifying and managing soybean diseases.